يا هلا 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 حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا حن قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا ويا هلا يا هلا ويا هلا ويا
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the program. Great to be with you once again and looking forward to all the wonderful guests that we will be talking to on the show this morning. Nikki Bush, a parenting expert, will be here to talk about the no-repeat developmental phase school policy, the impact it's going to have on learners that start right at foundation phase. We'll be talking also to Mumtaz Musa Sally. She is a blogger, she's an author, and she's going to talk to us about therapy without breaking the bank. But first up, we have someone who truly believes in himself. He's gone on to write a book. He couldn't find a publisher. He was out of work and he decided to take matters in his own hands. He didn't even have money to self-publish. He stood on street corners with a placard saying, "Please help me publish my book." Lo and behold, his book has become a bestseller and he's here to talk to us about his work of fiction. His name is Mishak Bevula. And I am so pleased to have him here because what an inspirational person. A young man who's been out of work for a long, long time, continued believing in himself, has had his book published, and he's found full-time employ. Morning, welcome to the program.
Morning, Julie, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's wonderful having someone like you in studio. What a story. And you're a smiler. I like seeing that. You smile all the time.
Things are going well.
Which leads me to believe that you love yourself. You love yourself enough to have believed deeply in your convictions. And even as being an unemployed man, you still persevered and you went out and got your book published. How does your story start? Where do you come from and when did you decide you want to become a writer?
I actually come from the dusty streets of Tititi, Lombard in Malamlele under Limpopo. So this journey of writing actually started in 2013 and 2014, where I actually started writing opinion pieces to newspapers and magazines. So week in, week out, I was always being crowned the best article of the week, if not a day. So
Wow.
until to a point where most of my followers on social media were always encouraging, why can't you just translate some of your writings into a book because you make such a great writer.
And what is your life like at school? Were you interested at that point already in writing?
When actually I went to school, I actually didn't have any interest in writing. It actually started after I've completed around 2013, 2014. So that's where it actually came about. I so wish it started back then at school, you know. Perhaps I would have managed to taste a little success rather than what I have now.
But you know, as the saying goes, there's a time, a place, and a reason for everything happening at a certain time in your life. Up to now, when you look back in retrospect, what do you believe was the biggest learning experience for you?
Honestly, what I can say is that, you know, when you're going rough time, like when you're going through rough time, you mustn't just let everything go according to what actually life is giving to you. You have to give to life what you want to achieve as a person. So you mustn't allow obstacles to have you stuck in one place. Always focus.
You took the bold step. I mean, not many people would think of doing that. You made a placard and you stood on street corners. Tell us about the placard. How long did you stand on street corners before you were spotted?
I was actually tired of rejection because after, you know, writing my book or finishing my book, I've looked everywhere for a publisher to a point where rejection was, you know, dominating most of my emails. until to a point where my brother advised me to, why can't you just do this, because you never know, it might work for you.
Wow.
And then I actually went there for a day holding that placard.
And
then
where were you standing? What was the corner? Where were you
I
standing?
was just waiting at the traffic
Yes,
robots.
where?
Yeah.
What street?
In Vosloorus.
Okay.
Yeah. So, after an hour or two, my brother called me and said, "Hey, guy, you are trending on Twitter and Facebook."
Wow.
I was like, okay, if I'm trending on Twitter and social media or on Facebook, now I can safely go home, because obviously things are going to start coming to me.
And that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened, because after that, I think I received something like 50 emails and about 100 calls, including even those publishers who rejected me. They were saying, now we want to publish your story.
Wow. How did you go about then deciding, even those people, you went to mainstream publishers obviously and they rejected you, after you were trending on Twitter and obviously on social media, the very same people who rejected you were now interested in publishing your book. What did you say to them, and how did you go about choosing the publisher that you've chosen?
Because I have incredible people around me, so I took most of those emails and sent it to my brother, who is my best advisor. So we sat down and decided as to which one would work best for me and all that. Those who rejected me, I didn't even bother to reply to them.
Okay. Your brother is your confidant, your friend. You really look up to him. What does your brother do?
My brother is in media industry. He's working for a monitoring company. So yeah, he got some great intentions when it comes to PR.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the book now. How long did it take you to write the book?
It was that time where I was actually unemployed. So to me, it was like I had 24 hours a day, I had nothing to do rather than writing.
Why don't you hold up the book to that camera so we can show now hold it up against you.
Okay.
There you go, a little higher up.
Okay.
Okay, the book is called Drowning.
Drowning in Own Tears.
Drowning in Own Tears. It's a work of fiction. Do you want to tell us a little bit? We don't want to give too much away. We want people to go out and buy the book. But tell us a little bit about the book and the inspiration, because as a writer, you've got to kind of dig deep into your soul to start telling a story.
Yeah, it's safe to say I'm a community activist. So whatever goes around in the community, whatever is hitting the community, is something which I feel I have to write about, because if you are a great writer, you have to write about something that disturbs your surroundings. Yeah, so it's a fictional novel which is said to provoke some of the coherent consequences of social ills that continues to dismantle and unsettling black communities, while also exposing the harsh consequences of women abuse in our communities.
So you talk about women abuse.
Yes.
What else do you touch on in the book?
I also, educate more people in the book about going through rough times, that when you are going through rough times, it doesn't mean it is the end of the world. You can still rise. You can still rise above, just like I did. So yeah, it's a combination of motivation, addressing social ills. So yeah, there's so much to take on this book.
So you looked around you, your own community, the suffering and the struggles of the black community, and that's the basis of your book.
Yes.
This could be the story of any black person that you pass in the street.
Exactly.
So it's going to talk to a lot of people, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
How did you feel writing this book? How emotional or inspirational did you become? Because a lot of the story is about real life people that you see around you or saw around you while you were writing the book.
Yeah, it was never simple, trust me, because I usually write at night, because that's where I find a good space to write, because there is a less of disturbance, So there were times where I would just cry and just stop, writing. I just go outside and get some fresh air and come back and write. I cry again, I just go outside. So yeah, it was a process, it was a process of crying, and that's why it is called Drowning in Own Tears.
How do you come up with the title? Because of all the crying you were doing?
I actually realized that most of the problems that as people we come across are actually the problems that we cause for ourselves. So that's why it is called drowning in own tears. You are actually drowning in the very same tears that you have created for your own.
So it's really about all the choices we make, the wrong choices we make, and we've got to suffer the consequences of the wrong choices.
So, yeah.
At any given point whilst you were writing the book, did you ever feel that I can't do this, I'm going to give up? And what about, apart from your brother, I know he's your hero, but apart from other people, did they kind of say to you, hey man, what are you doing? You're wasting your time writing a book. Who's going to read it? Who's going to pay $200 for a book?
Especially nowadays, you know that reading is a bit declining, you know. So, but when you know what you want to achieve in life or what you want to achieve for your own life, you actually listen to those who are positive rather than those who are negative. So that was my key point. So that's why I was always listening to my brother, because I knew or know that he will never lead me wrong.
Wow. Okay, let's go for an ad break. When we come back, we're going to talk some more about your amazing book and your life. What does it look like from back then when you didn't have a job?
All right.
My guest is Meshek Bevula. He is the author of the book called Drowning in Tears, and what a story. I think the story leading up to the book is more gripping than the actual book itself, but that mustn't prevent you from going out and buying the book. Don't go away. We'll be back in a minute or two. Still to come on the show today, Nikki Bush, who is no stranger to Let's Talk. She'll be here to talk about the no repeat policy at foundation phase at schools. We'll be talking to another author and blogger. Her name is Mumtaz Sali, and she's going to talk to us about therapy without breaking the bank. I'm sure it's some form of DIY. Sounds very, very interesting. So when she gets in, we'll unpack all of that. But right now we're talking to an author, Meshek Bevula. He's written a book called Drowning in Tears. He truly believed in himself. He is truly an inspiration. He was out of work for a long time, but he followed his heart and followed his dreams, and lo and behold, he's managed to publish a book. How are the sales going?
Yeah, the sales are going so well, you know, because for you to reach a national best-selling status nowadays, it's so hectic. So yeah, but we've managed to do that.
Brilliant. Obviously, I think the question on everybody's minds right now is, okay, Meshek, we've read the book, good going, enjoyed it. When's the next book coming out? But before you respond to that, what sort of reviews have you got on the book?
Yeah, the reviews were very positive, you know. Even though there were some who were negative a bit, but if the positive outwins the negative, then you got a good thing going.
What were the negative comments all about?
Some people will say it's a nice book, but very short, you know. Yeah, so those kind of things, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How many pages does the book contain?
It's 154.
Okay, so going forward, obviously, as far as authors are concerned, the moment you put pen down to one book, there's a whole string of books coming through in the future. What's your next book? Have you started working on it already?
I actually have now 7 unpublished books. So I'll just select as to which one to go with and just work around it a bit, you know, and twist it, yeah.
Okay, so do you keep them in manuscript form? Are they all on your laptop?
No, they're just on my laptop and phone, because I usually use my phone to write.
Wow. Do you want to? So you told me off air that the next book is only going to be published in 2 years' time. Yet, with a lot of mainstream authors, they kind of bring out a book almost every year, sometimes even 6 months after the first book has been published. You're not happy with that formula. Why?
I actually feel like releasing a book every after a year, you're kind of closing a gap between your sales on that book. Because when I remember my book, it was published last year in May, and then there were times around January where the sales were quite a bit. Then in January or February, boom, now they're going high again. So I so feel like sometimes you have to give your book a space to sell, because when I release another book, it means everyone is going to forget about this one.
And you want this book to be alive in the minds of people before you introduce them to your next book.
Exactly so, because my aim to sell on this book is actually standing at 5,000 copies.
Wow.
Yeah. So now I'm actually having, you know, most people who are buying this book in bulk, you know, I'm having politicians who are buying this book in bulk just to give to their, you know, followers. You know, so it's something positive.
As
that's
gifts. Are you planning on, selling the book abroad, maybe via Amazon or some such thing?
We are actually on that, because right now we have sold at least over 25 copies or 20 copies via Amazon to countries like USA, UK, Saudi Arabia, and Nigeria.
Now, you know, here in South Africa, thank God, we have lots of book festivals, and there are 2 coming up soon. I think one in August there's the Joburg Books and Blogs that's coming up, and there's another book fair as well out in Lenasia. Are you planning on entering any of these book fairs and book competitions per se?
Yeah, I think I've heard that one, the first one that you mentioned on radio. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna follow on it and actually find out how to enter and how to be a participant there.
As an author, like most professions, you belong to a certain club or a certain clique where you support each other and you bounce off ideas. Have you come together with other authors, or is it just you and your publisher for now?
Yeah, actually, I think last month, I was in a writing workshop with Melinda Ferguson, who's one of the best-selling authors in South Africa. So she actually formed a group where now we're gonna, you know, meet maybe after 2 weeks and all that, and just brainstorm and grow as authors.
Prior to meeting with Melinda Ferguson and her workshop, did you go for any formal writing courses?
No, I actually didn't.
So all of that contained in your first novel was from the heart, absolutely from the heart.
Yeah, because they always say when you write from the heart, that's where you get the best of, you know, of yourself or your potential.
Now, we know that when you write books, it gets edited and re-edited.
Yes.
When your publisher edited and sent the script back to you, how did you feel about all the stuff that wasn't going to be used in the book?
Yeah, I actually took it as a learning curve as a writer, because sometimes you mustn't be too arrogant, you know, more especially when you are with the masters of the game. So I actually took it in a right way and say, okay, I think I have to improve there and there, you know, as a writer who's willing to be a best international seller one day.
How many edit processes did you go through before the book was actually published?
I actually had it edited by my brother and friend.
The first time?
Yeah, and then my friend, and then it went to my publisher, they edited. So I actually tell them every time, or if I want to print maybe 500 books, please re-edit it again. You know, I just want it. Every time we just have to check,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And you're happy with the end result?
Yeah, I'm happy. I can't complain.
Is your next book going to be a sequel to this, or is it going to be a standalone novel?
The one that I'm going to release next year, titled Why Blacks Are Poor, is going to be non-fiction.
Do you want to give us a little bit of information as to why blacks are poor? I love the title.
Now I don't want to give much, but already there are a lot of ideas that I've come out with, but I'm going to give them at least at the later stage of this year, building up to the release of the book next year in May.
All right. You've now become, obviously, you've become an icon in your community, and also as far as the black community is concerned. What are you doing to give back in terms of the youth of the country?
I'm actually now doing motivational talks. Recently, I was in Polokwane. I think it was last month. You know, I was going there to give hope to the young ones, since it was June, as you know, June 16. It's a historical, you know, month or day in this country. So yeah, I'm actually building, you know, young leaders right now. I'm focusing on that now.
What do you say to them? How do you motivate them?
I'm very consistent on telling them that, you mustn't allow your current background to define, your next destination. Yeah. That's one of the messages that I always,
Believe in yourself.
Yeah,
Follow
yeah.
your dreams,
Follow
because
your
that's
dreams.
exactly what you've
Don't
done.
give up. It doesn't matter, where you are now. What matters is where you are going tomorrow. So I'm mostly, yeah.
You're gainfully employed now, thank goodness for that. But I also understand that you're studying TV and film production.
Yeah.
Why have you gone that route?
Because now I've realized my potential on storytelling. So I just want to focus more on that rather than focusing on something that I'm not passionate about. So storytelling is something which I feel like I need to build, something for myself around storytelling. That's why I'm studying filmmaking course now.
Are you hoping that your book will be turned into a film? And if nobody goes that route, are you hoping that you might do it at some point in the future?
I'm not hoping it will be turned. I'm hoping to turn it into a movie one day.
Yourself?
Yes.
Brilliant. So again, the self-belief. Where do you get all this self-confidence and this very positive energy and the zest for life from? Is this part of your personality, or did you have to go through a process to get where you're at as far as your mental abilities are concerned?
I think it is part of me, especially when I'm going through a rough time. I always try to read books. They kind of give me that confidence to, you can do it. You are a person. You got 24 hours a day too, just like other people who have done it. So yeah, I always tell myself that.
That's wonderful. You've told me that there's 7 books in the pipeline which you're going to release after every 2 years.
Yes.
You've also told me that you've been doing motivational talks. What else do you believe needs to be done to inspire more young people who believe there's no future for themselves, people who are unemployed, people who have dreams, but they just don't know when and how to get those dreams realized?
As they always say, you must first help yourself before you can help others. So now I'm focusing on self-empowerment, and then when I get that right, I'm gonna go to the communities again and teach them how to self-empower themselves. Because right now or nowadays, it's so hard to believe in government or to have hope in government. You have to do something for yourself before you can actually hope for something in government.
Who's your favorite author? Who's your favorite personality? And who's the person who's most inspired you?
My favorite author is Zeximda, and then someone who inspires me is DJ Sbu. He's doing amazing work about his life and around those who are with him. So that's what I can say.
Your message, your very strong and pertinent message to young people watching us this morning.
To aspiring authors, I can always say, don't allow those commercial publishers to change your story. Believe on what you believe on and stick to your story, because you never know. Just like me, I didn't know.
Mishak, you are truly an inspiration to all the young unemployed dreamers out there. I'm going to say it again. Believe in yourself, love yourself, trust yourself, respect yourself, and everything will happen for you.
Honest truth.
Thank you so much for being with us, and good luck on future sales of your book. And we can't wait for the next book to come out. God bless.
Thank you very much.
And there you have it, an amazing, inspirational young man. He was unemployed, but he believed in himself. He followed his dreams. And lo and behold, he is now the author of a book, and there's 7 more in the pipeline. Don't go away. We'll be back in a minute or two. Welcome back. I have Mumtaz Musa in studio with me. She's an author, she's a blogger, and she's also here to talk to us about how to undergo therapy without breaking the bank. And I think these days we all need some form of therapy or the other. We live in extremely stressful times, and I think if we don't vent or if we don't go for therapy or counseling, we certainly are going to crack up. So can't wait to hear what Mumtaz has to say about therapy without breaking the bank. Assalamu alaikum, welcome to the program.
Alaikum salam, jazakallah khair for having me.
Lovely to have you here. And, you know, a while ago, about 10 years ago, maybe even longer, I had read somewhere that it is the in thing in the Western countries to have your own personal therapist, because that is how stressful life has become. And lo and behold, we are now in that space right here in South Africa. We need counseling or we need therapy, and there's nothing wrong with it. There shouldn't be any stigma attached to the fact that you go for therapy or counseling. Your thoughts?
You know what, it's 100%. You know, there was a quote by someone recently who said that we're all in a state of depression. We're just in different stages of it,
Sure.
which is true. In our day and age, you know what, everyone has something that they're suffering from. What I find is that there's still a great stigma attached. So whether it's in the suburbs or in the rural areas, it's if I need a doctor, it's fine, you can go to the GP, but if I need a psychologist or psychiatrist, it's what's wrong with you. You don't need that kind of doctor. They're not even real doctors. But at the same frame, we are the same people who will say, you know what, at the end of the day, my daughter or my son's becoming a psychologist and he's going to be a doctor.
And we feel good about
Yes,
it.
but if we require a psychologist, we have to keep it hush. And I think, you know what, it's about breaking stereotypes, it's about breaking barriers, allowing even the kids around you to know that, you know what, it's okay. If you need that help, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
And it's going to help you relieve some pressure in your life, some stress in your life, then it's okay. And yeah, mental health is a huge issue, and hopefully it's coming more and more into mainstream of our lives. It has always been hush-hush. Sadly, though, still in rural areas, and also in ultra-conservative families and communities, there is still a stigma attached to it. So one does need to tread cautiously around these issues.
You know what, one has to. For example, I was speaking to a psychologist recently, and one of the things was, she told me she gets a phone calls, and every now and then, I need to come see you, but can we do it when the hospital's not busy or when the office is not busy so nobody can know I'm there? And the thing is, you know what, we need to start breaking those stereotypes. We need to say, you know what, if you need it and if it is going to help you and make you better and, you know, improve who you are, then why not?
We certainly need more and more of our brothers to dominate this space, because we still have that notion that men don't cry and men shouldn't cry. And as us females, you know, if we need to bounce off, we have sisters and friends to do it with. But men don't, and you kind of wonder, where do they go to? How do they then relieve themselves from all of that pressure and that stress? But that being said, I want to come back to therapy without breaking the bank in a minute or two, but I want to know, who is this amazing lady sitting here in front of me? You're a blogger and you're an author as well.
Yes.
Who is Mumtaz Musa?
I'm a blogger. I started a few years ago, and I decided I'm not going to do it for the fame. I'm not going to do it for the name. That's why nobody really knows who I am. And I don't do a lot of interviews either. And the thing is, my whole idea is to highlight issues that nobody wants to take into account. Nobody wants to take notice because there's too much, you know, it doesn't happen in our community, in our society. It can happen to someone else, somewhere else. We'll watch it on TV, but it just won't happen to us.
We're Muslim. That
Yes.
doesn't touch our lives.
Yes, that doesn't happen.
That's the stance
And-
we take.
And this is why I decided that, you know what, I'm going to write and I'm going to do this for a reason. And then a few years after my first blog, which was called The Confessions, came out, I started a lifestyle blog, which I manage till now. And this is to help ladies who are starting off businesses. So, for example, if the lady decides that they, you know what financial changes happens, they need their name out there, I use my following now to promote them, and everything is given to charity.
Wow. Let's go back to your initial blog.
Okay.
That took a lot of conviction, did it not? Because you touched on a very taboo subject. Talk to us about it, and I have no doubt in my mind that when you talk about these issues, and I know you come from an IT background, but you do need to do your research because you need to, you know, you need to have your facts and your figures. Talk to us about that first very supposedly controversial blog.
Okay, so the first blog I came out, what happened was I was reading one day and someone put on the story of their addiction with drugs. And I read this whole story and I got into touch with this person and I'm like, okay, obviously you want to remain anonymous, but I need help. I want to start a story and do it in the female because we hear about the boys in society that are addicted to drugs, but what happens about the girls? Because it does affect the Muslim girls as well. And I got researching, I got speaking to other former addicts who, like, you know, in the youth were addicted, and I decided this is it. And the blog touched on not only drugs, but it touched on the second marriages also. So it had this whole issue of, you know, where this wealthy man had a perfect wife that was a doll, but he abused her. And the one thing that always stood out about me was while he was abusing and she phoned her mother said, but you got a good life, isn't it?
Oh,
so don't complain.
At least you're suffering in comfort.
Yes. And you know, and I promise you, when this blog came out, it caused so much controversy. I was getting phone calls, I was getting emails.
Abusive phone calls.
They were abusive because they were saying, first of all, you're giving females rights. And I'm like, listen, Allah dedicated a whole para to us women.
Absolutely.
We have rights. Whatever I'm stating is Quranic verses that is coming on where the advice that is given to this lady to say that you don't have to endure the abuse. It is not Islamic to endure the abuse. And you know, it touched on a lot of people. For example, someone messaged me and said, our Muslim girls don't suffer with drugs, or they don't go out partying. So it was things like this.
Welcome to reality. We have drug rehab centers for Muslim women only. Yes. And that is really very sad. What else did you uncover with that first blog of yours? And do you have a sense of about how many people actually read the blog?
Okay, so the first blog was released with the Ask Nanima team because, you know what, it's sat on my computer for a very long time, and she spoke to me and I told her about it and she decided she's going to release it for me. The blog reached about 500,000 views in the first month.
Sure.
So we went quite viral in it, but you know what we uncovered was that nobody is ready to accept what is happening in society. So we would rather live in this whole gigantic bubble and pretend all is fine, but just hope and pray it doesn't happen to our children, because then we don't know what to do or where to turn. And it's just also like therapy. If our kids need it, we don't know what to do next. Mm-hmm.
So that was your first blog. The fact that 500,000 people actually read it probably spurred you on to take your next step. And what was that?
The next step was Destination Guantanamo Bay. So it was how easy it is for South African people to be locked up in places like Guantanamo Bay and forgotten about. And this was a normal South African couple that, you know, decided they're going on holiday to the UK, and the girl meets a boy and the family isn't happy. So what they do is they phone in and they report her as a terrorist. And she's taken and...
You mean her own family reported her?
Family.
Is this based on facts?
This is based on facts. So what happens is, if you look at most of the terrorists, how they get detained is that they have a terrorism line in the UK.
Oh, so somebody has actually spilled the beans on them.
Yes. So if you phone and you don't like your neighbor, you can, and I've seen it in this week. I was still telling my husband, for example, I told her there was this lady that came on that I spoke to in this last week. And she
a South African lady.
A lady from the UK, and she told me that my husband went back to Pakistan and he got married. So he's planning on bringing his second wife, but I plan on phoning in and saying that he went to Pakistan under terrorist conditions. So it's like, you know what, we are curating.
Why did she share that information with you? What was she going to gain from sharing that with you?
You know what, she first shared it on a public forum to find out how easy is it to do it. Is it anonymous? Will her family ever find out it's her? And I reached out to say, you know what you're doing is wrong. And we got talking as to why. Okay, obviously she was hurt. Her husband went to a different country, took on a second wife without her knowledge. But it was, you know what, I just needed to find out what was her reasons and whether or not, is it still reference to the blog that I did a few years ago? Is there still any relevance if I relaunch that blog onto that platform again?
A woman scorned. Did you find any relevance?
You know what I did? Like the same thing happened. For example, in my blog, the girl goes to the UK to get married, and there's a jealous relative, and she phones in, and 2 people from the family gets detained, and one never ever comes back home.
Oh, okay, let's go for an ad break. I'd like to uncover this a little more. Okay. I know this was not supposed to have been part of the discussion, but it is so fascinating. Yeah. Let's explore that a little more, and then we'll talk to you about therapy.
No problem.
And obviously therapy that is affordable. My guest is Mumtaz Musa. She's here to talk about a whole host of things. As you can see, there ain't going to be enough time to uncover everything I'd like to on the show, so we'll have to invite her back again. Let's go for an ad break. Mumtaz Musa is my guest. She's here to talk about undergoing therapy without breaking the bank, but we're talking about a whole host of other issues that has touched her life. She's a blogger and she's also an author, so lots to talk about. Let's get back to the issue around the Guantanamo Bay story. The girl was released.
Yes.
The guy is still detained.
Yes.
What are the chances of him ever coming out again?
You know what? If you look at most of the people that are currently in Guantanamo Bay, they were never charged. They were never given a court date either. So the chances of them coming out is very slim. When Obama decided he's going to shut Guantanamo Bay, there was a lot of prisoners released. However, till date, there are still about 25 that I know of prisoners that are being held without any conviction. So the chances of them ever coming back it's very slim. And even if they do go, they're not allowed to go back to their hometowns.
Yes, I believe so.
So they're given a new name, they're given a new identity, and they're left in a country. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, they have no idea how to speak the language in the countries they dropped in.
That in itself is a life sentence, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, perhaps we can leave this for another discussion. Let's look at the fact that I understand you're an author as well. Talk to us about your book. Was it the one and only?
It was a one and only because, like I said, when I do my work, it's not for the fame. It's for the reason behind it. And the Soul Dream of Rohingya came to me when my friend Shabnam, who was part of the Rohingya South Africa group,
Shabnam Mayat.
Yes, told me that, you know what, you have to do something. You got the platform, help me get the story out. And we spent, I think, about 2 months together researching and working on this. And we took stories from journalists who had interviewed Rohingya females and their story, and we started off from the girl, from when the Buddhists were terrorizing them, burning down the villages, from that moment till her moment of leaving the country to go find safety, and how most of the refugees, 95% of our refugees, end up trafficked.
Yep.
So,
sadly.
So it took me on that journey. And a few years ago, with the help of Salam Media as well, I decided I'm going to launch this book and donate all proceeds to the Rohingya refugees.
And that's where the writing has stopped.
That's where
because you're so busy with everything else.
You know what? It hasn't stopped. There were a few other blogs out there, but it was lighthearted ones that I just needed to get out there as well.
Do you continue blogging?
I do continue blogging at the moment. I'm currently busy with one. I'm working with another blog as well. And we're trying to highlight the issues on influencers, the impact influencers have on each other.
Mm-hmm. For example?
So what happens...
Without giving away too much.
So what happens is it's 2 bloggers, basically. One is trying to be the one in that lifestyle. You know, who's always chasing that the perfect influence life, and one is the influencer herself. And we talk about how much changes, how people around them don't accept this change because it's not them. It's a very plastic world. And we talk about of how girls look at these influencers and how much do they affect their lives? How much do they strive for this imperfection that they see online?
Before we go to therapy, one last question on blogging. Social media has taken the world by storm. Lots of young people believe that if they have a big following, if they are social media influencers, if they are bloggers, whatever it is that they're doing online, and if they have a big following, they have arrived. And I know, with due respect to you, you're a blogger yourself. How do you view all of that?
You know what, I'll be honest. We always think that the more people that are following you, the better it is. But if you're using your platform for something else, that's it's not going to change humanity, it's not going to benefit anyone, then you know what, you don't have to have it arrive, because nobody has that perfect life. And Shabnam Mahir, when I started off, Shabnam Mahir told me, even if one person sees your work and you've changed the viewpoint of one person, your work is done.
But that's if it's positive.
If it's
not
positive.
for the wrong reasons.
Yes, and if it's for the wrong reasons, you know what? For example, I know the teens are like, oh, we need certain amount of followers to say that we are it. And I'm like, but why? Why do we need those amount? Why do we need those amounts of likes? We need to start questioning ourselves. Why are we striving for everybody else's appreciation?
And that brings us straight into therapy without breaking the bank.
Yes.
That does say something about modern age, a man, women's psyche.
Yes.
That we want all of this adulation, admiration, accolades, etc. And yet we're very empty inside. And that's where the therapy comes in. What's going on here? What's it that we need X amount of likes to feel affirmed? And yet it doesn't matter. In those hundreds of thousands of likes, those people that have liked my blog or whatever the case may be, if I should fall down and die, or if I should be diagnosed with a dreaded disease, or if something happens in my home, a huge issue in my home, no one's going to come around and support me. Yes. No one's going to come and sit and hold my hand. No one's going to bring me a pot of food and say, you know, you're good to go for a day or two.
Yes, you know what? We live in a time where, you know, if I think my parents just always say, if you do something, don't do it for someone else's pleasure. Don't let someone else say, well done. But now we live in a time where we actually want that people to say, you know what, I like it. Double click. Well done to you. And that's the thing. And it's becoming so empty.
And plastic.
It's becoming so plastic. For example, everyone only shows their good side on social media. And I wanted to do this with a few friends where we said, let's create an account called The Real Me, and we post the ugly side of ourselves, because you know what, not all of us wear makeup.
And how many likes did you get?
And we're still talking about it, so I'm hoping we get to that.
Let's go to the issue around therapy without breaking the bank. Okay. So we all need therapy. We're leading very, very stressful lives. It might be marital issues, it might be issues at work, it might be whatever, or just feeling empty inside. How do you go about doing this without putting therapists out of business?
So what happens is a lot of people that do have medical aid can obviously get a certain amount. And the whole thing is, what happens with those who can't afford it, or who can afford 2 sessions and that's it? Because psychologists, if you look at them, they charge anything between 900 to 1,500 an hour. Sometimes you need 2 or 3 sessions per week, which is unaffordable to a middle and low income household. So this got me, it started off as a family, when a family member asked, what happens if we don't have medical aid? And it got me on this journey, and it got a lot of research, and I started phoning psychologists. And a lot of them said, if you already been through that first session, you know what, there are chances that they will meet you halfway and ask you what you can afford. There are places that offer for a small minimal fee of 50 Rand or so. And then you get group therapy sessions like Lifeline in Johannesburg offers, and you can go in as a group. So there is ways. But the focal point is still, when someone brought to my attention before I came on today, is what happens in rural areas. What happens when a child needs a child psychologist in rural areas, because there is, first of all, no big hospitals, and hospitals is in the closest town, and there's one psychologist for the whole 2 towns. And this got me thinking, what happens? And you know what, children need it, because my son's school last year, the school psychologists realized that at the grade 2s at that time were reaching burnout point, which is they grade 2s. Why are they reaching burnout point in school?
Oh my word.
And then I wondered what happens if, and then I got to phone schools, and I do volunteer within schools and that, and I asked the schools what happens, especially in public schools. And parents don't know this, but public schools do actually have a psychologist on call. And if they don't have, they have a family counselor, and if they don't have that also, because they're in a rural area or there isn't much, then a Department of Education must be reached, and one will be assigned to the school for a student or for pupils around there. So there is always help, and there's a lot of psychologists within our areas, in the Johannesburg area alone, which I've targeted, which are willing to say, you know what, this is my rate, but if you can't afford it and you genuinely need it, offer me what you can afford.
And I should imagine this goes to, this would be the same for a lot of medical practitioners, a doctor, a surgeon, whatever the case may be. If you need to undergo a certain medical protocol, and if you can't afford it, or if your medical aid is only going to cover X amount, you can. They're humans just as we are.
You know what?
You can
Yes.
negotiate with them.
I think you know what, as people, we find it very odd to say, you know what, but I can't afford it. We find it, you know what, we don't like asking, we don't like being put in that situation. But you know what, if it needs to be, they are humans, they are compassionate, and some of them are just genuinely willing to help you because this is what they do, this is their life, this is their love, their passion, and they're there to help you, and they're telling you that, you know what, okay, if you came to see me for the first one, and if I don't do pro bono in other hospitals, let's work on something, because a lot of psychologists do work in government hospitals as well. And you know what, as what I'm told is that the wait is not so long in the Johannesburg area in the government hospital for therapy help and that.
And I think that might be, one of the reasons might well be, is that the general public are not aware of the fact that you can access psychological services at public hospitals, which is very sad. And I think this information does need to go out. But that being said, what about kind of self-help via, online? I thought this is where the discussion was going to. Is there such services available?
Yes. So a lot of psychologists and so on, they do have an online option, meaning that if you're too far to travel or whatever the reason, maybe a lady can't drive or whatever it is, they're offering you to say, you know what, for a reduced rate, let me help you via phone call, let me help you via WhatsApp. So meaning that
or Skype for that matter.
So a lot of them, like one of the psychologists I spoke to in the Norwood area, she told me that what happens is she does it via phone call. And then every now and then she'll touch up, like during the week she'll touch up via WhatsApp. She'll ask the patient, how are you doing? Is anything, did the exercises we do help? So they can assess before they go on to the second call or so on. So there is a thing, you know what, the world is changing. We are moving to the next industrial revolution. Everybody has to do it via online. And the psychologists are telling you that we are here, we do offer also online help.
Okay, we've almost come to the end of the show. Two very quick things I'd like you to touch on is the issue around, are our men folk more amenable to therapy because they need it as much as we do, if not more? And in closing, what do you have to say about affordability as far as therapy is concerned?
Okay. The males need to start adapting and saying it's okay to get help because you know what, they bottle everything, which is unhealthy, and it erupts eventually. So they need to start saying, you know what, it's fine. And in terms of affordability, you know what, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, they all study the same amount as doctors, as surgeons. So for them, their rates are there to cover up their cost as well. But in terms of affordability, there are ways, because if you look at the universities, UJ has a brilliant ward that will help anybody that needs it for 50 Rand.
Okay, are you going to blog about this? I think you do need to do blog.
Oh,
you have?
Okay,
Okay, brilliant.
It's on Radio Islam's website though.
Okay, wonderful. Great to have you in studio. Hope we'll have many more chats in the future.
Inshallah,
Go well and keep up the great work. And there you have it, Mumtaz Musa talking to us about her blogging, her writing, and also ways of accessing therapy at affordable rates. Still to come on the show, Nikki Bush to talk about the issue of the no-repeat policy at foundation level in schools. Human potential and parenting expert Nikki Bush is in studio with me. We're going to be talking about the no-repeat policy by the Basic Education, the Department of Basic Education, which I think is got the entire South Africa up in arms. She's here to talk to us about it and to try and unpack the reasoning. I hope it doesn't go that way. The reasoning why this even was put on the table in the first place. But just before we get there, what I do want to say is, as you know, we have Nikki in studio very, very regularly. And I kind of asked her off air, why? I mean, it takes a big chunk out of her day. And she said, this is Nikki Bush paying it forward. This is her social responsibility bit that she's doing for not only ITV, but for the entire country and I guess for the rest of the world. So God bless Nikki Bush, the human potential and parenting expert, to talk to us about a whole host of issues on parenting, and very especially the outrage at the at the Department of Education regarding the no repeat policy at foundation phase. Morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Julie.
I like your new branding, your new name. Just tell us a little more.
Human potential and parenting.
Yeah.
So really, we're all on a continuum of developing our potential, whether it's our little children or even ourselves. We must never give up on growing and changing. And I guess with everything that's happened in my life in the past 18 months or so, I'm experiencing a huge amount of growth and change. So my business is reflecting that growth and change. And what we're discussing this morning around the no repeat policy really is about human potential, and it's about the quality of the human talent pool that South Africa has. Mm-hmm. And employers, both now and in the future, are going to want numerate and literate employees. And this particular policy change that has been proposed by the Department of Education could actually make what's already a bad situation even worse.
Now, who are the great minds that came up with this policy, and how's it going to impact on our children? People might sit and wonder, foundation phase, how much harm could it possibly do?
You know, you raise a really important point, Julie, and I just want to pick up some pieces of paper here from the DOE. Even school headmasters have told me over the years, school principals who have not taught ECD and preschool education, they've said, they always used to think what happened in the preschool and in grade R. They do puzzles and they build things and they colour in. That's child's play. And they never took it seriously until one day they had a wake-up call, and I've heard this from many school principals, as to what really goes on in early childhood education, that's where all the foundations for literacy and numeracy are actually being laid. And we actually want our children to be learning through play in an unstressful way, because learning through play is a very concrete experience. It's real. It is meaningful. It requires my body, movement, my mind, my heart. Everything comes together in an integrated experience. And it's very, very real. Once we start moving on through the education system, so we get into grade 1 and we start learning in the abstract, so not so much in the concrete, see, touch and feel, but we start learning about symbols like letters and numbers. But to learn that easily, it would be fantastic to have played and had exposure to things like what we've got on the table, which we can unpack a little bit later in the show. And the travesty, of course, in South Africa is that the majority of our children do not have a preschool education. So they get pushed into grade R, which has become this band-aid for everything, and they're not even ready for grade R. And then they go into grade 1, and we are now seeing a bottleneck in grade 1 of, according to the Department of Education, 20% of our grade 1s are held back. So we are sitting with a bottleneck in grade 1, with too many children in grade 1, and we need to clear space for more. So
okay.
maybe, and this is, we haven't heard much from the Department of Basic Education, maybe this is a way to shift the logistical nightmare they sit with in grade 1. But unfortunately, what it means is that children are going to be pushed up into grade 2 and grade 3 without having consolidated the skills they need for the next year. And that's rather unfair.
How's that going to impact on those kids, Nikki?
Well, what's really interesting is that of course is going to impact hugely. If you think about the building of a wall, it's got bricks in it. And if some of your bricks are missing or cracked or broken, when a deluge of water comes down, what's it going to do to that wall?
Right.
Now, take out those bricks and maybe take out the whole wall. And that's what we don't want to happen to our children. Already they're suffering with an education system that is far from good, far from effective, because we know what's happening later on in the system, that we have huge levels of illiteracy. From grade 4 right through into matric, we have a massive dropout rate. Why have we got a massive dropout rate? Because kids have not had the right foundations, and you can't fix the system at the top. You have to start fixing what's going into the system. The raw material going into the system can't be fixed. It needs to be raised up. It needs to be raised up from the very beginning, and that happens at home, because school readiness is something that we can get involved with at home. And a lot of people think that school and learning is what happens in a book, at a desk, with a chair, in a classroom. And that's only half of the story.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, we need to address early childhood education, early childhood development, which is that whole period from birth through to age 6, actually, when you go into grade 1. And it does include grade R, but there needs to be a couple of years of stimulation, the right kind of stimulation of the brain, the body, to prepare it for loving learning once you get into the abstract learning environment. So grade 1 through to grade 3 is where we teach our children how to read. And then from grade 4, they read to learn. They need to read with meaning. Now, we've just had the SONA speeches from Cyril Ramaphosa and obviously all the various provincial heads, and they're all saying, and I'm hoping that they picked up from the media coverage we've been generating, that they are committed to ensuring that all children by grade 4 can read for meaning.
However, if this policy goes ahead, we're going to have a disaster when kids reach a grade 4.
That's right. So, this is the kind of statement that we're seeing. So these are documents from government. It says, a number of education experts have given opinions on this matter, and the overwhelming message is that it does not make any educational sense to make young children aged 6 to 10 years to repeat a grade. According to the experts, the children who repeat, on the whole, gain absolutely nothing. On the contrary, for many affected children, now the affected children is about 80% of our population, repetition is a powerful early signal of failure, a signal that lasts through the individual's life.
Who are these experts?
We don't know, and nobody's come forward and told us who these experts are. Mm-hmm. You know, obviously we have huge issues in our education
let's
system.
just take that issue around failure. Let's assume that this expert has there's a little bit of truth in what he or she is saying.
Yes.
That kids will get damaged by the fact that they're repeating a year.
Socially and emotionally, I think that's what they're alluding to.
So this child's not going to feel good about him or herself, and there's going to be
because their peers are moving forward and they're being held back.
So
okay.
what do you respond to that statement?
Right. So if you're ever going to get a child to repeat, the sooner you do it, the earlier in their life, the better.
And it's how you communicate the fact that they're going to be repeating.
That's right. But very interestingly, on my radio interviews on 702, we had callers phoning in talking about the fact that their children, they were advised to keep their own children back in grade R or grade 1. And it wasn't a problem for the child. It was their own self-esteem as a parent that they had to address.
Okay.
And everyone without failure has said, and even all the parents I've dealt with over the years, if a child is held back at the right time, it is the best possible thing that could happen to that child. And if you do it in grade R or grade 1 or even grade 2, that's the time you should be holding them back to A, consolidate their skills, and B, the emotional difference between children is not that great yet. So it's a comfortable space to hold them back. And most children move forward with much greater confidence and a much better self-esteem because they believe they can.
Absolutely. Let's go for an ad break. Nikki Bush is in studio talking about the no repeat policy by the Department of Education, how damning it is as far as our little kids are concerned. Don't go away. We're going to be back in a minute or two. And she's also going to demonstrate some stuff that she's got here, some toys. She always brings toys into the studio and I just absolutely love it. So we're going to play with some toys and she's going to explain the benefit of these educational toys a little later on. Welcome back to the final segment of the show. Clearly not enough time for us to uncover all of the things we want to with Nikki Bush, but as always, we'll invite her back in studio. By the way, she will be back in about a month's time when she'll be talking about the next book that is being released. Nikki, we'll talk about that later, but right now you want to point all our viewers to a poll. Tell us about that.
So it would be fantastic if viewers would go and visit the Nikki Bush Speaker Facebook page, because on my page we've had about 200,000 people engaging on this issue.
Wow.
We've had over 900,000 impressions. It's gone viral. Professor Jonathan Jansen connected with me because on Facebook, he obviously got to read some of the stuff.
It's the first time he heard about it, isn't it?
He hadn't heard about it until he picked up what I was talking about.
Right.
And I picked it up because other educators who are very concerned about this issue asked for help to try and bring this to light and to put it fair and square in the news. So we managed to do that, which is great. So now we need the public to get behind us. And please go and sign the poll that you don't agree with this no repeat automatic progression policy. And here's another reason why we need people to support this. And this survey will go through to the President's office, and another educational colleague of mine has already sent her survey through and the President's office has acknowledged receipt. These to put children into classes and for them not to be able to consolidate their skills and learn what they need to learn, and then to push them up, what we're doing is we're shifting the burden to the teachers.
Ooh.
The teachers are now sitting with children in their classes who don't have the skills to do what they're trying to teach them to do because they didn't consolidate them the year before.
Absolutely.
It's not just unfair on the child. It's unfair on the teachers who are already stretched. If you're thinking 80% of our population of children are sitting in classes of 40 to 60 in a class with one teacher, no teacher's aid, they must now teach and remediate at the same time. And maybe remediate a child who hasn't actually been diagnosed properly as to what are the learning gaps for this child. In a school that is resourced, you might have a remedial teacher, you might have an occupational therapist, you might have an educational psychologist.
Right.
You will have a support structure where you can sit down with the parents and say, this is what you can go and do at home to help the situation. I think for the large majority of our children and parents, they are sitting in the dark.
Absolutely. Okay, Nikki, time constraints as always. You've got something very interesting here on the table. Why have you brought it along? And please explain to us what this is all about and how does it tie in with what we're talking about this morning?
So, as I said earlier in the interview, we have the majority of our children with no preschool education.
Right.
Which means they really struggle when they get to grade R and grade 1 because they haven't actually played with the stuff that gives them the foundations for reading and writing.
Okay.
And this is a shape, color, quantity activity. This is called
shape, color, quantity activity.
Yes. And it's also about stacking, building. So this is spatial planning, and it's also about our fine motor coordination. And Julie, those are the very same 3 fingers that you use when you hold a pen or a pencil.
Right.
That is your tripod grip. So what we're doing is teaching the brain what is that grip. So when we finally give a child a podgy pastel, a crayon, a Koki, they will know what to do. They're using the correct grip. And why have we got these particular 5 shapes and these 5 colors? Well, when we have colors, we can get children to, we can give them instructions. Find me all the yellows. colors. Find me all the orange shapes. Find me all the red shapes.
Right.
They're learning similarities and differences. When they learn to read and write, a p and a b can look very similar.
Oh, absolutely.
An e and
That's
a
why we
k.
have the dyslexia as well.
Yes. So we need to teach them to look for detail in the differences. Also, these particular 5 shapes have all the line that would be included in a letter. So take an A for apple. It has a curve from a circle, and it has a short vertical line from a square. Look at that.
Right.
Can you see the line? So obviously it's somewhere like that. But the whole thing is that children have internalized by
Right.
mouthing things, by playing, touching, feeling, stacking, threading. They've actually internalized parts of shape that then become part of the abstract art of writing and reading. And here we can also do so, count how many shapes we have on this mast. Now move 2 over to your left. How many do you have left? How many do you have now?
Right.
We're adding, we're subtracting. We're not telling children that. They're just playing. There is so much that one can do here. There's sorting, there's matching, there's categorizing, so they can then place the right shape, the right color on this card, or they can stack according to this card. This happens to be a very, very outstanding educational toy. It's called GeoStacks, and I honestly believe that if every parent and every child in the preschool phase could have exposure to something like this and know why, and know that you can play with this in 50 different ways, with Play-Doh, with crayons, with sand, in the bath, you name it, we can do
You
all
mean they
sorts of things.
take this into the sand pit and play with it in the sand pit, in the bath,
it's
etc.?
plastic. It's indestructible. Okay.
What about these, what look like giant Lego pieces?
Oh, right. So I really brought this just to show you that putting together and taking apart construction toys are a very, very important part of learning, because we are conceptualizing stuff. It's like letters. The letters CTA spell nothing, but in the right order, they spell cat. If you build these in the right order, you can build an aeroplane, or you can build a
great
castle.
foundation.
And you've got great foundations, and we need free play. Where there's no copying, there's no particular thing that we're building according to a picture.
And let the imagination run wild.
Exactly, very important, but also important that children learn how to copy,
Okay.
because in school they're going to need to know how to do that.
Coming back to the issue of the no repeat policy, we've talked about the horrors of it if it does go ahead. And if it doesn't go ahead, we're just all going to live happily ever after.
Well, not quite. We still need to overhaul this education system that has a massive dropout rate by the time the kids get to matric, because they're still not numerate and literate. We're just going to make it worse if this policy gets passed.
Where and how do we fix that? Because there's also issues around affordability. A lot of kids in the rural areas just give up because of a whole host of issues. They don't have school fares, bus fares. They
just
can't
too
get to
hard.
school. Yeah, it's child-headed households, etc., etc., etc. Where and how, and I know this is a huge task, it's going to probably take another 100 years before we
another
overcome.
interview.
Absolutely. What is the hope for children like that? What about those dropouts? Don't talk about the university pass rates. That leaves me cold.
Exactly.
Where and how do we move forward with all of this, Nikki?
Julie, I think that we need a task force that goes back to the drawing board here. I think we need a South African solution. I think we need to look at things that haven't been done yet, that haven't been maybe explored or mined enough. Who's at home looking after the children? Is it the grannies? Is it the gogos? What is our role as parents? We need school readiness, and we also need learning readiness, and those are two completely different things. We need a lot of parental education.
What is the difference?
So school readiness is getting ready for that grade R, grade 1. Learning readiness is getting ready to learn for meaning in grade 4. So that's what's happening in that grade 1 to grade 3
We don't
phase.
understand this concept.
Well, exactly.
What is it that we need to do to close that gap, or to get a better grip as parents, get a better grip on it, so that we can be prepared to help our little ones?
Well, I think it starts with actually acknowledging the miracle of being human, the miracle of this remarkable thing called the brain. We are taught through most of the messaging we get from government that we will take care of education. We will educate your children in schools. That is the curriculum. That is the formal curriculum. As parents, we need to embrace the fact that we provide the informal curriculum, and it is just as important as that formal curriculum. So we can't educate children in a vacuum. That's the whole concept of future-proofing children, which we'll discuss with my new book next month.
Isn't your other book called Future Proofing You?
This is the revised,
sequel.
updated edition,
okay.
because so much has changed in our world.
I keep
You're very
in
good.
touch.
You're very good. So I think it's about acknowledging who all the stakeholders are. That we don't do education to children anymore. We learn with them. We grow and develop as parents with our children. That doesn't mean we're not the boss. It doesn't mean there's a lack of authority. But there's an evolution of a child, and we need to acknowledge that a child is on an evolutionary path. And a child growing in physical size does not equate to complete development.
Okay, Nikki, with 2 minutes to wrap up, where do we stand with all of these amazing concepts of yours that you brought in time and time and time again, which has blown us away in the fourth industrial revolution? Does anything change at all?
Well, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And I think that is true. I follow the Lego Foundation quite closely, and I'm always interested to see how they've managed to get themselves into the World Economic Forum at Davos every year. And they're bringing play, to the fore, as I've been trying to do here in South Africa. Play is the language of children. It's the language of childhood. It's a way that children get to learn easily and with no stress or little stress. And it ticks every button for a child. We must not lose sight of the fact that children are born to play, they're born to build. They are born to grow and develop and to reach their potential. We just need to provide them with a learning journey, not a destination. And I think what's happened with education is we've made it so complicated. And of course, the Department of Education has changed the curriculum so many times and put such huge pressure on teachers that they don't have enough time to teach anymore. They're doing so much administration and dealing with so much change. We kind of need to go back to basics. And we need to understand that this is a journey that must be celebrated. We've lost sight of the magnificence of the child and what the child brings into the world, the possibilities and the potential. And we need to go back to that.
Finally, your views, and I think I've asked you this before, but it still irks me when I see this playing out, the competitiveness of parents to push their children forward.
Yes, so of course we do have agendas, and we need to remove our egos from the picture, because often our egos are part of how we sabotage our children's development. So it's important that we acknowledge what are the pictures that we are imposing on our children, what pictures are we hoping they will play out for us, and that we take a step back and we have a hard look at that and give children time to develop their own picture of what success and happiness looks like. And we need to be supportive of that picture. We live in a world that is changing so much, and children do need time. They've always needed time. But right now they are caught in this maelstrom of disruption and change and expectation that they're losing their place in society, I think. They're just pawns in a power game. And
Absolutely.
I think that is so destructive. So,
and that's where we leave it. We'll see you in a month's time when you're going to talk about your book to us.
Yes.
Can't wait for that.
Fantastic.
And please keep up the good fight with the Department of Education.
Thank you, Julie. And just to remind our viewers to go to Nikki Bush Speaker on Facebook.
There you go. Please, please, please sign the petition. Make a difference. Make your voice heard through that petition. Time for us to wrap up. Thank you for being with us. As always, take care on the roads. Until the next time, a big thank you to the production team. And it is Khodafez from me, Julie Alli.
قلبي على جمعة الخير هلا، حني قلبي على جمعة